Sarah, thank you so much for joining us on Social Impact Power Chats.
Happy to be here.
Amazing. So, we're going to start as we always do by getting to know a little bit about you and how you got into the social impact ecosystem.
Great. Yeah. So there's been, a through line generally around social impact in my work for the last 20 years. But my entry point into that was actually through a political and policy lens. I went to school out at American University in Washington, D.C., with the intention that kind of upon graduating, I wanted to, change the world, make a difference. And so started that by working on the Hill and I would say in my own world making a difference, but you were, when you first start out as an intern and early career person on the Hill, you're largely responding to letters, doing tours for constituents. So it feels maybe less adjacent, social impact adjacent, but you know that you're working for a member too. And in this case, I was working for Senator Durbin, and really believing in their vision for the future, for change and leadership. So even if you're having the tiniest, smallest role in that, it was my entry point into sort of imagining what could be different in this world. And from that perspective, it was through a policy lens.
Amazing. So, you have moved from Capitol Hill
Yeah,
to a different arena of
right.
sorts.
with,
Um,
a, with a couple stops along the way.
so tell us about where you sit today. What does your social impact career look like today? Because you really now are like you are not adjacent. You are
Yes,
in the
squarely in
world.
it.
Yes. So tell us about.
So I'm sitting right now at the United Center. You can sort of see the atrium behind me. I work with and on behalf of the Chicago Blackhawks as the executive director of the foundation and as vice president of our social impact outreach and civic affairs team.
Amazing. And, I've had a chance to hear a little bit about you and the work that the Blackhawks do in the community, but can you give us just a smidge, of your mission and the depth and breadth of your work? Because I know
Yeah.
for me, I talked to a lot of sports teams and I was really impressed when I first learned about everything you all are
Yeah.
accomplishing
This
locally.
is something I can talk about for hours because it's so exciting to see kind of the approach and what we've changed in the last 4 years across the organization, really across our entire enterprise, including here at the foundation. And it started honestly 4 years ago. Uh, the only thing that has stayed the same is our mission to really make Chicago proud, to do as much as we're doing on the ice, to do off and give back to the community across Chicago that's given us so much. So that has been kind of our North Star. We've stayed in that sort of true to mission focus, but everything else in terms of what, how, and where we're focusing has really transformed in the last 4 years. And what I like to say is kind of the impetus for that was, our now owner and chairman, Danny Wirtz, really kind of had the opportunity to think and reflect about the work that we were doing in the community and on the foundation and thought, we can do more. We can really do more. And so, what would it look like if we actually brought folks in from outside sports to actually make a difference? Folks that were in the nonprofit sector understood what was going on. So, I had the opportunity to throw my hat in the ring and was able to join and really build our strategy. And for us, it's been about how we transform the Chicago Blackhawks Foundation from, in general, what I think we have seen in sports, and it's changing now quite a bit, which is exciting. But I kind of coined this phrase confetti philanthropy, where we sprinkle a little bit everywhere. We really throw ourselves a party and sometimes leave a mess behind, to be honest, and transition from that kind of activation, marketing, community work to one that is really centered in relationships, in trust building in the communities that we're engaging, and really operating with humility in terms of us not being the ones that are coming in with the answers, the ideas, but instead recognizing, and honoring and investing in those communities that we believe have their own visions for the future. And for us, it was about kind of that approach shifting, and then in identifying where did it make most sense for us to really be active partners. And it was just very natural. When you think about the Chicago Blackhawks, you think about the West Side. It was the Chicago Stadium. Now it's the United Center, but we've always been here on the West Side for almost 100 years. It'll be 100 years in a just very short while. And so really investing in West Side neighborhoods, in community there, was an absolute starting point for us. The other kind of immediate starting point was, how do we think about and look at kind of reimagining what the responsibility and opportunity is to honor our namesake war leader Blackhawk. And with that comes a whole host of learning and unlearning, as a white woman here in Chicago, and understanding kind of where and how we could be real partners, and especially starting from the standpoint of Blackhawks ancestral tribe, the Sac and Fox Nation, who were forcibly removed and are now in Oklahoma on in their tribal jurisdiction and reservation. What would that kind of engagement, relationship building, and partnership look like? And to the rich diaspora here in Chicago. And then lastly, obviously we are a hockey team, and with that comes such incredible opportunities and platform for good for sports-based youth development. So how do we think about that through the lens of growing the game, which especially with a sport that's really challenging for folks to access because of the expense, the ice, the transportation, all the host of reasons. But how do we begin to think about breaking that down, connecting to communities, and creating real opportunity so that everyone can see themselves in this game that we love so much?
Amazing. So you gave us so much to think about. First of all, I want to start like a no hashtag for
Yeah,
all of the
exactly.
social impacts. You heard it here first. Sarah coined it. And brilliant. But now I'd love to double click. There's a lot of people who listen who are practitioners. They're doing this work, and you gave us so much food for thought. Even if it's just one of those pillars that you just discussed, the place-based, working with First Peoples, how to get more people enjoying sport and thriving through the power of hockey, any of those things. You as a team have so many tools at your disposal, right?
Yeah.
From grant resources to tickets to know-how, right? The coaching, the space, like the way
Yep.
that you utilize and share that beautiful arena, right? Like all of those things. Maybe walk us through one or two, because I'm sure there's like 40, but just one or two examples of how you have flexed your resources to accomplish the work that you just described, which is so powerful that somebody else could probably, take and package into their ecosystem.
Yeah, it's such a great question, and to be honest, it's a thing that I'm continuing to learn, kind of as we think about asset deployment and asset connection across the enterprise. New things continue to come up in terms of opportunities for us to kind of fully leverage the entirety of what we have to offer. But I think a great example actually is within our West Side work, a program that we call Support West, and it's really centered on how we are really walking the walk and engaging with our small businesses on the West Side that are minority owned. And for us, this started, Emily, when I think all of us across the country, no matter what space you were operating in, as COVID was kind of ravaging, our country, we saw from an economic standpoint that a lot of, the government stepped in. There's all these PPE dollars. Folks are accessing it. And who was left out? The small businesses, particularly minority small businesses. And you saw kind of a pretty easy thread as to why that was. And it's connected certainly to the generational and structural racism that we continue to have to bear as a country, where these businesses didn't have the banking relationships, didn't have the connections that other largely white companies had. And so for us, it was an opportunity to really step in and say, what can we do? We see a lot of places where people are doing kind of spotlights, right? Small business spotlights. What would it look like if we did more than that? Certainly those platforms are powerful, but let's actually invest. So we started a unrestricted grant program called Support West, started in COVID. So it was really about getting resources immediately out the door. It made the application incredibly easy, obviously bilingual as well. And from there, and as we've gotten feedback from the participants of that program, we started to build it from what was clearly kind of stepping into a gap to what can we do actually as part of this program to create community. And that's where the other assets came in, where it was not just about the financial resources from the foundation, but a recognition that we are in sports and entertainment. As we're looking at most of the businesses that are part of the Support West program, they're in largely the hospitality space. So they're caterers, they're brick and mortar shops, beverage businesses. We could actually leverage our physical space, be hiring them as vendors, and providing some real insight and knowledge. So now this program has become a 9-month cohort program where they're connected to a business advisory group, which are our season ticket members. There are our individual donors as a foundation, our corporate partners. They all make up this business advisory group that helps them through this 9-month program to really identify what are the business challenges that they're seeking as they're moving to, a consumer product good line, or they're trying to open a brick. We have the knowledge to help share and connect. And then we actually are introducing them to new customer bases as we hire them for our own events, our spaces. Our corporate partners are now hiring them for their corporate spaces if they're caterers. So those are just examples of where there's started with financial resources, has moved to kind of across our full stakeholder wheel, business input and support. And then we actually bring them to our games, hire them, have them at the atrium so they have the visibility across all of our fans. We put them on our broadcast. So that is where our platform becomes a really powerful tool, a marketing tool that we're excited to share. And again, I think we're only starting to scratch the surface as we think about kind of deploying all of our assets from an employment standpoint, a resource standpoint, and engaging our full stakeholder wheel.
Amazing. And this is something else you and I have discussed, and not to state the obvious, but those are grants that even if you wrote as many grants as you had the capacity to give, you couldn't do as much as what you just have described, given your ability to create market share with the team and with the team's partners. So I think this is just a really great call out for people to think about, what are the tools in your toolkit that could actually help you 5x, 10x, 20x, whatever it is, the value that you're trying to support community partners with. So
right. We do survey our cohorts, and 100% of them had said the most valuable component of this program that has helped them kind of scale their business and improve their business has been the business advisory group. So it's actually not the financial resources. That actually tends to be the carrot that brings folks to the table. But what actually makes a difference in their business from an ongoing standpoint is this business advisory resource.
Yeah, which makes, if you unpack it and think about it, it makes total sense, but it's something that it's not how people are currently looking at the problem or looking at the opportunity often. So it's incredibly valuable, sage advice. I can't believe it, but we are already at our last question. Power chats go fast. And so, the final question is really around looking forward. If you had a crystal ball, a social impact crystal ball, what do you see in the future? What are things that you're gearing up for as the leader of this team, the foundation team? And how are you thinking about kind of resource allocation going forward?
I'm really hopeful for the future. I know there's lots of cause for concern and for pessimism. Oftentimes, you just have to turn on the news for that. But I'm really hopeful, and I'll speak to it specifically in Chicago. I think what we're seeing now across spaces is incredible collaboration and a recognition of the intersectionality within social impact. And 20 years ago, as I was starting out, there was a lot of focus on education solutions or housing solutions or safety solutions. And I think what I've seen in the last couple of years is incredible knowledge and insight across sectors coming together to really look at whole communities and community-led solutions. And so really, the things that make me most excited is that we are starting to really dismantle, I think, some of the power dynamics within philanthropy, where we are practicing trust philanthropy, acknowledging that these solutions exist within communities, acknowledging that whole communities need to be addressed and looked at, not sort of single point solutions, and that the sectors across are starting to come together. I just had a meeting today as we're thinking about the Near West Side and really supporting kind of career development and wealth growth within this area. It was academic institution at the table. It was the union at the table. It was myself, and it was employers. So folks that even in some cases could be seen as a little bit challenging to each other are actually coming together and saying, how can we all work together in this? So the combination of all those things actually brings me a lot of optimism. And I think we'll see a lot of disruptive philanthropy in the next several years. I think we're going to see whole community solutions and hopefully a lot of kind of disruptive power dynamics that happen and have naturally been created over generations between sort of philanthropy and social impact organizations.
Brilliant. As always, I really enjoy connecting with you and seeing all of the ambitious ways that the foundation is supporting, you know, Chicago and the communities more broadly. And I know as we're taping this, there's a game tonight. So go Blackhawks.
Go Blackhawks.
All right. Thanks so much, Sarah.
Thanks, Emily.